Steve, welcome back. What do you make of all this?
Well, you know, having worked in the Pentagon after I came off sea duty back the first day that President Reagan came, I was there for, I don't know, 3.5, almost 4 years. There's one thing about controlling that building and another thing about being President Trump's senior national security advisor for the military. I think this goes back, and I think Caldwell, people got to watch that Tucker interview. I think there's some deep and disturbing truths in that. This is, I think the leaks and all this stuff is they're wanting us to chase rabbits here. The core of this, to me, gets down to, you said Republican on Republican, Megyn. I think it's almost even deeper than this. This is about the America First national security policy and about how we've been a neoliberal, neocon country for 40 or 50 years. This gets down to, I believe, this whole strategy in the Middle East and people like Caldwell who came from the Koch's defense priority, which essentially also made Pete and transformed Pete. And years ago, they were looking to do that, transform him from a Fox News host to someone who could go into senior levels of national security by giving him some of these veterans groups and others that would promote him something over and above just a media figure. I think it shouldn't be lost on anybody that this comes up, and I say this with total respect for Tucker, who I respect and I consider a friend and a colleague, that you know, our show and our part of the MAGA base, we're quite, or at least 2/3 of our audience, 80%, are very pro-Israel in the defense, but we're very anti any type of military conflict with Persia about these nuclear sites. I think this comes down to a fundamental break between the defense priority guys and the Koch organization, which is much more isolationist, much more bring it all home, versus people who are engaged, want to understand we have to be engaged in the world. We have to have a national security policy, even around hemispheric defense, that is forward-leaning, but we don't want to lead with military. We want to lead with economic warfare and others. And I think that's where this rift is. It shouldn't be lost on in your story, which I thought was a brilliant overview of this and bringing in all the elements. You know, Bibi Netanyahu has come here twice in the last 4 or 5 weeks. One time, President Trump literally blew up the conversation with Trump Gaza, which kind of came out of nowhere. And because Bibi was here to pitch the United States being a part of, an active part of a military support for at least an air assault, maybe even a ground assault into Persia to take down their nuclear facilities, which would be catastrophic from a military view if you know what the damage assessment would be. He came back, you know, under the headline of tariffs, but he was here to make a second pitch because President Trump did not engage the first time. And President Trump basically told him in front of the world, hey, by the way, we're starting negotiations one-on-one with no participation of Israel with the Persians starting next week in Oman, and now it's going to continue again in Rome, you know, this weekend, with which I'm sure the president being there for the Pope's funeral may even participate or have some sort of more direct involvement. So I think this gets down to, and I think we ought to get on the table. It gets down to the situation with Israel and people like Tucker and Kurt Mills and other brilliant people who I think the world of, saying, hey, for too long we've had the tail wag the dog, right? And President Trump and others who are supporters of Israel saying, hey, look, this has to be part of an American national security policy, and we have to have this. And I don't totally agree with President Trump about a piece of paper, but it has to be something other than a military conflict. I don't think it's lost on people that the Pentagon has been accused under Pete and with these guys of not having detailed plans and support criteria ready to basically jump in here and have it. They've kind of slow walked it. And I think the reason they've slow walked it is that there is this President Trump, and he said it again the other day in the press briefing, the press avail in the Oval, that he wants peace. He wants a peaceful way to settle this. I don't like and he's got his top guy, Witkoff, on the negotiation of this. I don't like the V word. I don't like verification. I think this has to be taken down piece by piece. And I think we have to go up the escalatory ladder on economic warfare. Number one, my question is, why are we allowing they say 1.5 million, but it's really almost 2.5 million barrels of oil a day to leave Iran that funds the mullahs and goes through the Straits of Hormuz through Straits of Malacca to China. And it's 22% to 25% of China's output, of which, oh, by the way, we're engaged in an economic war right now. I think going up the escalatory ladder, which would say, hey, I've been in a carrier battle group off the coast of Iran for the hostage crisis in the Persian Gulf. We've got 2 carrier battle groups right now in the Red Sea, keeping the Suez Canal open. Just move one over to in front of the Straits of Hormuz, and let's do a blockade, a naval quarantine of everything, and the mullahs will be gone in 100 days. Now, you're going up the escalatory ladder, but I think all of this in the Pentagon gets down to a major fissure on really our national security policy going forward. And are we prepared to get sucked back into an open conflict in the Middle East again?
I don't think you're wrong. But I wonder who they're fighting. I think they're fighting Trump, not Pete. Pete is definitely Trump's executor.
100%.
Like, Pete will do
100%.
what he is told to do. And Trump
100%.
he hasn't been as non-interventionalist as that core strain of MAGA, right? Like, he bombed Soleimani. His rhetoric around Iran has been a lot more bellicose than I think some in the party would like to hear. We do not want saber rattling, suggesting our boys are going to have to go fight a war against Iran at all, much less than have to do it. But I think my take on this story, this is my own opinion based on the facts as I just laid them out, is that probably there is a strong anti-interventionalist strain within the Pentagon. A lot of these, and this guy, Caldwell's former military too. He fought abroad and saw horrible things. And I think a lot of those guys, like Pete, got to the place where they do not want us to be too trigger happy. And so I'm not saying Caldwell leaked those top secret documents to NBC News, but it certainly could have been him, and it looks like the Pentagon thinks it was him. And if he were to do it, why would he do it? Well, because those documents were about possible war down in Panama, possible use of armed forces in Panama. It's possible there is a strain even within the Pentagon that's even more, to just make it easy to understand, dovish than those in charge, and certainly more dovish than Trump.
I see your analysis, and I'm going to disagree, and here's why. I think there's not, and this is why the promotions under Bush and Obama and President Trump the first time with Mattis and these guys. We took down the caliphate, but remember, the center of gravity of U.S. foreign policy and military and the defense contractors is big army, big operations in CENTCOM in the Middle East. It shouldn't be lost on the chats. When you're doing the signal chat, the one thing that jumps off the page at you is President Trump is not engaged with these guys on a real-time basis. Who's he talking to in a real time? Go back and look at the chats. They're kind of throwing up ideas, and Pete's getting them up to speed. They're directly talking to the combatant commander in CENTCOM on the Houthis thing. President Trump's engaged directly with the combatant commander right there, CENTCOM. CENTCOM is the center of gravity. This is why Obama failed on the pivot to Asia. All the pivot to Asia.
Wait. Let me just keep it simple for me. Keep it simple for me. Why would somebody, and again, with all due respect to Dan Caldwell, who I want to underscore is denying that he leaked anything, but why would someone like that leak the alleged war plans? I mean, the report was that Trump had asked the Pentagon to drop war plans against the Panamanians, basically to retake the Panama Canal. Why would they leak that?
Here's why.
Go ahead.
Because the strategic endeavor of President Trump is a hemispheric defense. It's to get off the Eurasian landmass in a direct military conflict. Look, you look at NATO, you look at the Gulf Emirates in the Middle East, you look around to the Straits of Malacca, the South China Sea, you look up to Korea and Japan. Around the rim of the Eurasian landmass, where we fought all the wars of the 20th century, you have America. You have American commercial relationships, trade deals, capital markets, but it's underwritten by an American security guarantee. This is why we have $1 trillion defense budget. This is why the kids, the sons and daughters of the deplorables are on 2 carrier battle groups in the Red Sea to keep the Suez Canal open for Europe. What President Trump has said in Panama is central to this. For the non-interventionists, or at least to tone it down, we're going to shift to a hemispheric defense. And that hemispheric defense is going to go from the Panama Canal, initially from the Panama Canal, which we're going to control to block the Chinese and Russian Navy from meeting in Caribbean, all the way up to Greenland, where we're going to block the Russian Navy from coming through Murmansk and Archangel, coming down to the North Atlantic to basically put ballistic missile submarines off of New York, so they can launch in the United States, and fast attacks down off of Norfolk and all of our ports on the East Coast. Also, you talk about Canada and the Arctic. That's part of the hemispheric defense. Pete Hegseth's first visit outside of Panama was to go to the three-island chain, Hawaii, Guam, and the Philippines, to talk about the vast Pacific, as that is the natural defense of the United States. President Trump's strategy
and Marco Rubio's first trip as Secretary of State was down to Panama. Go ahead, keep going.
Panama. That's and hey, the guys in the Pentagon, the defense contractors, are smart people and they're tough. They ran Elon Musk out of there in a second. He hasn't done anything about the Pentagon. These are the original gangsters, okay? They're OGs, and they said to go, hang on, the hemispheric defense is the way you cut the defense budget down from $1 trillion to $500 billion and really defend America. And then on expeditionary forces, you can pick and choose wherever you go for that. But we're off the Eurasian landmass.
I'm staying in my third grade level.
We're off of the Eurasian landmass.
Okay, but wait, but you got to help me, because if that what you were saying ended with and Dan Caldwell is a neocon who doesn't want that. He doesn't want Defense Department budgets to be slashed. He wants us to be more interventionist in Eurasia, and he doesn't want us to be focused on Panama. Then it would make sense. No. But he's not. He's aligned with Tucker.
He's aligned with Tucker, but that's the people turfing him out. Remember, he's the one turfed out. Look, I'm not a huge Dan Caldwell fan originally. He's okay. He's one of these Koch guys, the defense priorities, which are total isolationists and kind of support what I would call hemispheric defense. The reason he was turfed out, and they leaked the
allegedly,
and I'm not so sure he allegedly leaked, but the Panama war plans, I'm not so sure he actually leaked them. We'll have to find that over time. Is they're trying to get rid of the people more aligned with Tucker Carlson, the defense priority guys, who Pete really came from that area. That's why Pete's sitting there going, it's his chief of staff, these other guys. It looks like the building's coming after Pete. I think this comes down fundamentally, and what your audience ought to think of. There's two separate ways you can look at American national security in the 21st century. President Trump is presenting a radical, but a plan that goes back to our founders in the Monroe Doctrine and Manifest Destiny about you take care of the Western Hemisphere. If you secure the Western Hemisphere with the vast Pacific, which is as big as the Eurasian landmass, as a defense, and you take care of the Russian Navy from the Arctic and from Greenland and from Panama, you've basically hermetically sealed the United States. This is why he's also talking about a Iron Dome type thing or anti-ballistic missile. Once you've done that, you've hermetically sealed the United States and probably have the potential of cutting our defense budget by half. Okay, if you continue, and the plan of what the Pentagon has is not sustainable. If you continue this madness of us being everywhere and having troops everywhere and having, from Ukraine to the Middle East to everywhere, you're going to bankrupt the nation. And I think that's the fundamental thing. And you're seeing turmoil. And Pete does not have control of the building. I'm a huge Pete fan. We went fixed bayonets on Pete when he was almost tossed over for Ron DeSantis very early in the confirmation phase. So our audience is 100% in back of Pete. We want Pete to stay. But this gets to deeper, and they're coming after Trump. That's why this is the deep state. Marco Rubio today had a huge restructuring of the State Department. You're going to see, and they leaked it on Sunday with some false things. The deep state, whether it's the National Security Council, whether it's at DNI, whether it's at CIA, State Department, or particularly the Pentagon, is trying to put a siege mentality on President Trump that he can't take any actions he wants to do to basically implement, Megyn, the America First national security strategy. And this is a live fire exercise. They're out for Pete Hegseth. And I think NPR is based on, I think Ron DeSantis is out there telling people, you should have picked me at first. Who's you going to trade out Pete on? I'm in the bullpen. I'm ready to go. And the Republican establishment would love that.
Oh, wow. There is something coming in from left field. That is Ron DeSantis the source that NPR is basing their outlooking for others? Because Eric Erickson, a conservative commentator, was all over X last night saying he's hearing it too from White House staffers. I'm being assured it's not true. And Trump himself on camera yesterday saying it's not true with no wiggle room. Trump knows how to leave himself a little wiggle room, but he gave a full-throated endorsement of Pete. I remain confused. Tariff wars, stubborn inflation. No wonder gold has been routinely hitting all-time highs. In volatile markets like the one we have now, don't sit on the sidelines with your head in the sand. Take control and safeguard your savings. This is why so many people are turning to Birch Gold Group. They've helped tens of thousands converting an existing IRA or 401k into one in physical gold. Is it time for you to hedge against the economic instability with gold? Just text MK to 989898 to find out. Birch Gold will send you a free, no-obligation info kit. Text MK to the numbers 989898. A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Countless 5-star reviews. They've helped so many protect their savings. Check it out. Text MK to 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.